This is Sean with Voices of Levant. I'm here with Stu Rhodes. We're here in the Meridian. We're going to be saving stories up here in the dining room upstairs. Stu, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
So a little bit of your history. You actually lived in the house directly to the south of the parking lot on Meridian Street at 5690 Meridian. Is that right?
That's correct.
And North Central High School as well?
Correct.
And you were on the City County Council for 16 years?
From 1980 to 1996.
And then you started consulting companies to be able to work with county organizations around the state.
Well, I was working with companies that wanted to do business with counties. I was, because of my relationship with many county officials around the state of Indiana and around the country, I was able to open doors for those people and get them to the right decision makers quicker than they could do it with their own staff.
Okay. So you also got to know the family that this restaurant was based off of before it was the Meridian, the Dodds townhouse family. They went to North Central the same time you did?
They did. In fact, Jody Dodd was in my class, along with a number of other people. And so I got to know the Dodds family that way. And then when we moved in here, then Dave Dodd was pretty much the cook and cheap bottle washer and everything. So we came here quite a bit.
So just kind of describe the family. Just I don't know anything about this, like how many kids or anything, like you know any of that kind of.
Oh, I honestly don't know. I think there were 3 kids, maybe 4.
Okay.
But anyhow, like Jody was my age, David was a couple of years older, and their family had owned this for a number of years. I think they had the Flagpole restaurant before this, over on Michigan Road. But then, anyhow, so they were, I started coming to this restaurant when I was a kid with my parents. So, moving in next door to it, I knew that it was a kind of restaurant, and having a restaurant next to you was a lot, you knew what their hours were, you knew when they were going to be open, so it wasn't really a big disturbance, to our family at all. So.
And you actually went to high school also with my uncle Rick, Rick Holt, and Holt Park in Rocky Ripple is from his parents, and you helped orchestrate getting that approved with the city. Is that the right way to?
Well,
how did you help that come to fruition?
Rick's father had purchased as an investment, had purchased a number of lots in Rocky Ripple prior to it being those lots being declared in a floodplain, which meant you couldn't build on them. And so over the years, he had sold off a few of them, but there was a large plot of land that was right in the center of Rocky Ripple. And at the time, this was after his father had passed away. Rick eventually inherited them. And going forward, it was just, he was going to pay taxes on those lots. And really have no benefit of not being able to build on them or sell them or that type of thing. And so there were back taxes owed on those, and they were headed towards a tax sale. But then through my relationship with the town board there, because that was in my council district, and I frankly can't remember if I was still on the council or this was after I was on the council. Anyhow, I knew the town board, and they wanted to, the idea came, okay, let's turn that large plot of land into a park for the residents there in Rocky Ripple. Well, in order to do that, we'd have to get the taxes cleared out. We'd have to, but if that land was donated to the town of Rocky Ripple, then there'd no longer be taxes on it. And Rick agreed to give them enough money to build a shelter on that park land.
And the playground.
And a playground.
Yeah, and the playground equipment.
And all that, and all the playground equipment. And so it was really kind of a win-win-win type of situation, because the land was no longer unusable. It was used for the park. The shelter was going to be paid for not out of taxpayers' funds, but through a donation. So the land was donated to the town. The shelter was paid for as a donation. And then it came off the tax rolls, so the whole family no longer was liable for property taxes on those things. So, I basically worked out a deal between the town board, the county assessor, and the whole family, and we had everything drawn up by an attorney. I'm not an attorney, so anyhow, that's how Holt Park came to be. And so, like I said, it was a win-win-win type of situation. It was a win for the town. It was a win for the county, because they weren't going to be collecting any property taxes on it anyway. So now that it belonged to the town, there were no taxes on it. And then it was a win for the whole family just to be rid of that burden. And they were generous enough to donate the land and the money for the shelter. And then they've done stuff since then, in relationship to that. So it was just, I was just kind of the facilitator of the process.
Well,
so it was a win for everybody.
I know that Mabel, when she was still alive, lived in 97, that she was extremely happy when they first started having the Rocky Ripple Festival in 99, and then every year since and whatnot. So when you were on the city county council, I'd like to just touch on that for a little bit. So you're 16 years. Did you start off in the same position and carry that through, or what areas did you help? What areas did you oversee?
Well, the areas that I represented were kind of the area of the Glendale area, Broad Ripple, so a lot of Meridian, Kessler, and some of Butler Tarkington. And so it was nice middle class, families, and I came from a middle class, family.
Your father was a colonel.
Grew up in the area,
right?
Yeah. My father was a bird colonel in the Air Force, but he was also head of selective service for Indiana, and had been in that position even after he retired military-wise until his passing. But
and your mother, she was on.
my mother worked
clerk for.
Well, she was
legislation.
She at the time of her death, she held the title of Journal Clerk Emeritus for the Indiana General Assembly. She worked for 30 years at least for the Indiana General Assembly on the desk of the House or the Senate, keeping track of the bills. She was a journal clerk, keeping track of the bills and keeping track of where they were, whether they were in committee, whether they were in the House or the Senate, or waiting on the governor's signature. So,
what was the normal gestation period from a bill when it originally was created to when it got passed? How long would that normally take?
Oh, it depended on the type of letter.
6 months, couple of weeks.
Because everything was done. There was generally, when she started out, the legislature only met in odd numbered years. and they met for like 90 days. And so a bill would be introduced, and depending on, the process is, I'm not that familiar with the process, but they, basically it had to get out of the house of origination to the other house within, the first 45 days, and then they would consider the ones, the other would pass. And until they, and then they used to, years ago, if they had billed too many bills near the end of the year, they quote, stop the clock, so that they could get bills passed. They would basically go late into the night, early into the next morning, and they would, they'd stop the clock at 5 minutes till midnight, and then once everything was done, the sine die, then they'd start the clock back up. They don't do that anymore.
So what were some of the major things while you were there that you saw that was getting pushed to help evolve the city? Like, what are some of the major benchmarks that you really got to saw happen for Indianapolis?
Oh gosh, the building of the Hoosier Dome, and the acquisition of the Colts was done while I was on the council. The building of Market Square Arena was right before I was running for council, and then eventually, so number of things that were done downtown, the bricks around the around the circle,
right?
A lot of improvements, but a lot of good things happening in the neighborhoods too, because I probably went every year. I probably went to 50, 60 neighborhood meetings.
Same area, or to survey the other neighborhoods?
Well, no, just to keep track of what was going on in the neighborhoods and be there if they needed something.
Right.
I mean, a councilman's job, the way I approached it, was to, help the neighborhoods out with whether it was streets or drainage or crime problems or whatever, and keep those areas up to date and safe. And so, but the areas I represented had, they had, some had unique problems and some didn't. Some were very established. I worked a lot with the president of the neighborhood associations. I was, but that's back before we had cell phones and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I had an issue.
What was your footprint? Like, how far out were that you would deal with these
Well,
presidents?
basically, there are about 30,000 people in each district, 30 to 35,000.
Okay. So it was consistently this district.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was consistently this area, but actually, I think this is my first 4 or 6 years. I had some areas over in Lawrence, and didn't have Meridian, Kessler, and Butler Tarkington. And then when they did the redistricting, that would have been, anyhow, when they did the redistricting, I picked up areas over here, and the areas in Lawrence went to a councilman more in that area. So, which is fine with me. It was still, I had, I think the first year I ran, the neighborhood that was directly south of School 59, where I grew up, and I knew people through there that where I'd grown up. I knew their kids. They knew me. I had one lady who was the Democrat precinct committeeman for that area. Now there was 2 neighborhoods that voted in at School 59. One was North Kessler Manor Annex, which was that neighborhood that was from 56 to Kessler, from Keystone over to rural. They voted, and that was one precinct. Then there was the other precinct was on the northwest side of Kessler and Keystone. That went over like to Evanston, up to 62nd Street, and then Keystone, and then down to Kessler again. And that precinct, at the time I ran, the precinct committeeman and vice committeeman were Mike and Karen Pence.
Okay.
That was his first, quote, political job in Meridian County.
VP's first gig.
Yeah. And so on election day, I went in and, I every election day, I would visit all the precincts in my district, just as a time to catch up with people, to, again, just be around while I was running. So this was the primary election, and I was running against 3 other people, all of which were precinct committeemen. And I had been slated because I went around and met with all the precinct committeemen in the district, and which they had not. But I ended up being the slated candidate. So I go into School 59 and I say hi to Mike and Karen and meet their election board people. Then I go over to the next one, and the Democrat precinct committee woman was a lady whose son I knew was in my grade, and she comes up and gives me a big hug. And she said, and of course I knew everyone on that board because I'd grown up in that neighborhood. My next door neighbors were the Democrat, or actually the Democrat judge and sheriff or something like that. Anyhow, and she asked me, she says, "Have you met your opponent for the fall?" And I said, "Well, her name was Fannie Bell Pegg. She was a great lady." And she said, "Have you met your opponent for the fall?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." And so Chris walks in at that time, and so she introduces us. She looks at him and she says, "Chris," she says, "I don't know, tell you it's going to be a tough election for you, but you see, my judge and my sheriff were Stu's next door neighbors when he was growing up, and my clerk and my inspector were his scoutmaster and den mother, and I was his first boss at Walker Research when he was in high school." She said, "You're not even going to get the Democrat board votes in this precinct." And I'm not going to stand there like, okay, well, our politics is local. That sure proves it. I knew the Republican board members too, but it was just that was the kind of and it was that kind of thing. I had at least 70% majorities each time I ran. So, but it's because I grew up in the area. I knew the people. I kept in touch with them, and that's what you're supposed to do,
right?
As a councilman. And you get involved in other types of issues, but unfortunately, it's come to the point now that somebody says, "Oh, you were on the city county council," and I said, "Yeah, I was on the council when we were building the city, not watching it get torn apart." And so it hurts. It hurts to see. I mean, frankly, my thoughts about what happened downtown and that type of thing.
Now, what are you referencing? Like, what areas are you referencing? What, just some people that might not understand where you're coming from.
Well, back then, if you were a bad actor, you were sought after. You were caught. You were arrested. You were prosecuted. We had good prosecutors back there with Goldsmith and with Scott Newman, and you kept the bad actors; they were in jail, and
Now, when you say actors, you mean as far as people running businesses? And
no, I'm not talking about people running business. I'm talking about the people that are committing the crimes.
Okay.
They weren't left. They weren't put out with a an ankle bracelet or stuff like that.
Acting out badly.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And so, the rioters that tore up the downtown,
Right.
had I been on the council, I would have insisted on the FBI coming in with facial recognition to go over that videotape, identify those people, arrest them, prosecute them, and put them away. Frankly, if that had been done, should have been done the first night, but the young man, Chris Beatty, that was killed, that
I was
probably
friends, actually. I was friends with him.
Well,
Yeah.
he was a good friend of my daughter, and went to high school with her. And frankly, I think if that had been done, or it could even be done now, they'd probably cut the crime rate by 30-40%.
Right.
If those people were in prison. But that's not going to happen with this, So, I mean, it hurts. And when I talk to, people who are still alive that were on the council and with me, we're upset about it, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
And, but back to better stories.
Yeah, some of the things that you really go ahead with what you're doing, but what I'd like you to really touch on also is what you really loved about the job and what specific solutions were more so consistent that you helped the businesses or helped the people. What were a lot of those niche areas?
You tried to help both the residents and the businesses in your district. If there was a process, if they were having trouble getting zoning or having trouble getting, various types of things through the city, you became an advocate for them. There were many times I would watch every particular zoning case and everything like that came through that was in my district. I was one of the few that did that, but and I had many battles with the city voting people that they were trying to promote something that wasn't really good for the neighborhood, and so won some of those battles and lost some of those battles. I jokingly say that they, when I got the notices of these things, the envelope, instead of Stewart Rhodes on the envelope, it was Stew Rat Rhodes. It was just a typo, but I'm sure that
didn't become a nickname, did it? I hope not.
No. It was very funny because I thought, well, that comes from the zoning people that don't really like me. Some of them didn't, but I was one councilman, and they had staff, but that staff, the staff that I knew and were good people, they would let me know when something was going on. But I mean, we had a situation here when it was Dodd's house, and I think Dave was considering retiring and whatever, and the Bank of Indianapolis was trying to get a zoning to make this place here a bank branch. Well, I don't blame them for that. I mean, on the main drag and the north and south drag from downtown, people would stop and do their business right here. There's a branch over there on Illinois that's right this area. They eventually put a branch over on Pennsylvania. But they tried to rezone this, and the president of the bank called me. It was Mickey Maurer, and Mickey and I still remain good friends. But he had Karen and I, my late wife and I, down to meet the staff and everything. And I said, well, you can go ahead, but I don't think the neighborhood's going to support it. And I said, I know I won't support it if you have a 24-hour ATM. I don't want people coming in next to my house at all hours of the night.
Yeah, because you live directly next to the bank if it was going to happen. And that's,
I said, I mean, unless you're going to put in bulletproof glass in all my windows and, and I said, I will not support a 24-hour ATM. I don't care what you do. And he says, well, we'll have a neighborhood meeting and you'll be invited. Everybody will be able to speak their piece. Well, they scheduled the neighborhood meeting right at the time of spring break for my family and for my kids. And we had reservations to go to Space Camp down in Atlanta, or anyhow, it was on the way to Florida. And we were going to go there. We were spending 2 or 3 days there and then go on to Disney World. But so they had this neighborhood meeting. And I got contacted by an attorney who would remain nameless, who said, I will represent you for free because I don't want this. None of the neighborhood wants this. I said, fine, he said it for free as long as I remain anonymous. I said, okay. And he was a good zoning attorney. And I got contacted by the bank's zoning attorney, who was also a good zoning attorney. And I said, does he realize what a hornet's nest he's going to stir up with this? He says, I've been trying to tell him that, but yeah.
And what year was this, approximately?
I'm thinking it was around 1997, or no, it was, I was still on the council. So it was like 1993, 94,
okay,
something like that.
Got it.
And
this was after Dodds was
still
going.
Yeah, Dodds was still going.
Gotcha.
But they had an offer from the bank to buy them out and turn it into a bank if they could get the zoning. So they have the neighborhood meeting, and I'm only getting this from secondhand, but pretty reliable source said Mickey did his presentation, said how he was going to give $1 million to the neighborhood associations and each, and and various other things he had committed to, and it was held down here at the church, just south of here, North United Methodist, I think it is, and the place was packed. There were probably 200 people there.
Against.
There were, and so he made his presentation, and a lady who's no longer with us, she was a neighborhood activist here in Meridian, Kessler, a gal by the name of Helga Barussi. I understand Helga got up, she looked at Mickey and she says, Mickey, let's just cut to the chase. He says, he turns around to the crowd. He says, how many people are in favor of this proposal? Never maybe 8 people
out of 200.
Out of 200 that put their hands up, and 3 of those were, I think, on his board of directors. How many are against it? Stand up. The entire room stands up, and except for those 6 people. And Mickey's just like, I can't believe this just happened. And he said, and true to his word, he dropped it, and so that was the last of the proposed bank.
That's beautiful.
But that's local politics.
Right.
That's local involvement. That's people caring about their neighborhood, and so and because people are. I mean, while I was there, I told the attorney who's representing me, I said, please make sure that people understand that that you're there representing me. And I couldn't be there because of plans that I had with my children, and family comes first. So it was, it was no big deal. But it was a great example of local politics and local involvement.
Right.
That that people wanted to be sure that this place happened. But Holt Park is a great example of the community coming together and proposing and getting behind the board of directors, and then taking it from there to the festival and everything, which is, I mean, hundreds of people.
Well, a few thousand now.
A few thousand
it's like 2,000 to
now.
3,000 people every year.
Yeah. Go to it, and I still go to it, just for fun and because the various vendors and stuff like that. But
Rick also, you got with the town and built that giant climbing device.
Yeah.
Donated money for that. You could have 30 adults on top of that thing. They call it the crab trap, or it's like an obstacle course in the middle of the structure, and I-beams curved. I like the McDonald's arches going everywhere and cable and everything. So I want to touch, and Rick, he ended up going out to D.C. with Lugar, and then was with Ronald Reagan as well as Bush and lobbyist and all that fun stuff. It's done very, very, very well. Just want to touch on a second. I know that your your wife that you lived in next door, that she passed away. What would you just like to say, kind of in honor of her and just being able to live in this area and what she did with her life and career? Just maybe a few words.
I mean, she she graduated from the University of Indianapolis, and she was a South Side girl. I was a North Side guy. We met because I actually hired her to be on the council staff. I was on the city county council staff for 4 years prior to running for council, which gave me qualifications of knowing what the council was doing. But Karen I think she was just in her senior year. I had met her because her brother was young Republican chairman after me, and he brought her to help stuff envelopes one night, and that's where I first met Karen. And then we were looking for an assistant clerk for the council, and looking for someone to kind of do an internship. And so our first date, we jokingly said, was when I took her to lunch, and the council paid for it, just to interview her for the job for that. And then got back with the council attorney and said, yeah, I think she'd be great. She knows all of the computer stuff and how to operate all the, because, and then once I was on the council, then she had to find a new position because she couldn't work for the council if we were married and I was on the council, because I was on the council in '80, so she went to work for the combined offices of Dick Lugar and Dan Quayle.
Okay.
Well, and she first did a stint in the county auditor's office for about 6 or 8 months before she took that job. And one of the funniest stories that she read, she came home one night. She says, "You know that they have Marion County still has a bounty on coyotes?" I said, "Well, I'm not surprised." I said, "That's probably one of those old laws." She says, "Yeah, you know how they prove that they had the bounty? They got them? They bring in their ears. That they cut off the animal after they've killed it." She says, some crusty old guy brings it in to the auditor's office and wants to collect the bounty on it. And so he's got this sack of coyote ears. And so Harry Aiken, the late Harry Aiken, a wonderful guy who's got the otter, he says, "Oh, yeah, we still got that on the books. I'll take care of it, Karen. You go back to..." She says, "I was never so grossed out." But that, that's a rather funny story.
Well,
But then she worked at the combined offices of Luger and Quail, and then took a job as the assistant to the fundraising officer for St. Richard's School, and that's partially how all my kids ended up going to St. Richard's.
okay.
So.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time and the history of this local area. I think it's very suiting that you're the first one to tell their stories up here, because you are, from everything you just said, obviously more connected with the development of the area than probably 99% of the humans that now currently live in the area. I mean, maybe that's
that's.
But the point is, you've been instrumental, and I know a lot of people know you and appreciate your service that you've done. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
No, I mean, I'm glad that the Meridian is as successful as it has been. It just, I'm unfortunately, I won't go into that, but just, we've eaten here a couple of times in the last few years, and but I know my children come here and they still enjoy it. But they remember the kindness of the Dodds family when Karen was going through her cancer treatments, and that she had always been allergic to strawberries. And they didn't know that, but they would fix up some chocolate covered strawberries and bring them over for her. And she said, "Well, they're not going to kill me," and she loved them. I mean, she just absolutely loved them. And they just did that out of the kindness of their heart. And there were a number of times that they would comp us a meal and things like that I never asked for, but that was the way of their being good neighbors. And so, I'm sure the Meridian's done that for, a number of people too, but, it's just, it's a wonderful, people have wonderful memories of this building and of the people that work there. And, and I do too. So
I appreciate you taking the time today to save some of your life and stories here as well.
There's a number of anecdotes that I could go off on, but I enjoyed my time on the city county council. I really I feel blessed that I had that opportunity. Like I said, I wasn't able to, for physical reasons, was not able to serve in the military, and so this was my way of public service and giving back.
Right.
And
The local Robin Hood. Do you ever look at yourself as that?
No, no. You just, I mean, I grew up with a family that was parents that were in public service
Right.
for many years, and so I think that's, and so hopefully I pass that on to my kids. So,
Well, I thank you for your service.
thank you.
You got
Thanks
it.
for the opportunity.
You got it.